Legislature's back in session. We're in the second reading file, but colleagues, before we move on the bills in second reading file, I'm going to say, with regard to the amendments have to be in writing for it to be considered. Okay? So with that, we'll move to second reading. The good gentleman from Jigo on bill number 8-38 COR. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On bill number 8-38 COR, an act to amend subsection A and repeal subsection D 1, 2, 3, and 4, all of section 5127, sub-article C, article 2, chapter 5, title 5, Guam Code annotated relative to the extension of Government of Guam leases from 5 to 30 years. My colleagues, this legislation proposed to extend commercial leases for government property from 5 to 30 years. First and foremost, this legislation was introduced in direct response to a long-standing issue for investors and future businesses in Guam. For any investor, the current time frame allowed is not adequate to achieve a suitable return on investment.
Senator?
Yes.
On the motion, what do you want to do with it?
To move, I apologize, Mr. Speaker, for bill number 8-38, move to the third reading and open for discussion.
So your Honor, your motion is to move bill 8-38 COR to the third reading, and you'd like to discuss it?
Yes.
You can proceed.
Okay, and I'll just continue where I was at, if it's okay with my colleagues. But anyway, not too long ago, several legislations ago, that law was changed to the current 5-year lease maximum. This was done because there were issues with a certain lease, and the legislature was working to prevent further issues. None that were found to be contrary to Guam law. We must restore the ability to expand the years allowed. The law's current status discourages local and off-island investors from contributing to the economic prosperity of the island. We have been limiting these businesses' potential for growth, and it's time to stop holding them back. Fostering economic diversity has long been a challenge on Guam, but to truly achieve it, we must provide businesses with the tools, resources, and environment necessary for them to thrive. This proposed change is not just about extending these terms. We also want to give the governing body, which will make decisions on the lease, the opportunity to do their job by removing the requirement for the legislature to approve exceptional term contracts. These contracts that may run above the 30 years will be required to provide a determination of need submitted to the Speaker of the Legislature by the Governor. This determination of need is required for any lease applications above the potential 30 years. Our government needs to create an environment where business can confidently invest in Guam's future. We need to ensure that the opportunities are available with the least amount of red tape. It has happened before. Bills are introduced to address issues, and the legislature is asked to approve certain measures. But history has shown it can sit in committee with not even a public hearing. Too many times that's happened. This does not diminish the role of the legislature in this process. Rather, it reinforces the legislature's authority by ensuring that lease agreements are approved by individuals who have been vetted and confirmed by this body to serve in the respective boards and commission. By offering a more predictable and long-term lease structure, we are sending a message to investors that Guam is ready to move, the stability and support necessary for sustainable growth. With longer leases, we will see more businesses willing to take the lead, knowing they have a fair opportunity to succeed. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, anyone wish to discuss the bill? Senator Taidigu, you are recognized.
Sidus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and Hafaday to my colleagues, Biba Mes Chamorro. I would first like to express my appreciation to the author of this legislation for acknowledging a key issue that I have long emphasized since the 35th Guam Legislature that economic growth cannot be sustained under the constraints of a 5-year lease term. By the time most businesses recover their initial investment, their lease expires, stifling opportunities for sustainability and growth. While I recognize the need to revisit the current 5-year lease term, I must raise my concerns regarding the proposed extension to a 30-year lease. Such a long-term commitment introduces significant risks that cannot be overlooked. Instead, I proposed a more balanced solution, a 15-year lease instead. This approach provides businesses with the additional time they need to achieve their goals while preserving the government's ability to remain agile and accountable. A 15-year term offers operational stability without locking public resources into outdated agreements. A 30-year lease, however, may go too far. It diminishes the opportunity for critical oversight and public input, elements that are essential to ensuring the proper use of public lands for a collective benefit of our people. Over such an extensive period, our community's needs and social economic conditions are likely to evolve significantly, yet we would be constrained by agreements that no longer serve the public good. Additionally, we must be cautious about the precedent we set. Extending leases to 30 years risk prioritizing private interests over public welfare, effectively locking away public assets for an entire generation. This diminishes flexibility for future administrations to adapt to our community's changing needs. In conclusion, while I understand the intent behind this bill, I believe the proposed 30 years lease term does not align with the best interests of our island and its people. A 15-year lease strikes a fair balance between sustainability and accountability. So I urge my colleagues, with the support of this amendment that I would like to proffer on the floor, that would strike out 30 years to 15 years instead. So, Mr. Speaker, I proffered this amendment that has been already passed out to my colleagues. And the amendment, if I may proceed on my amendment, okay. So the amendment reads, the amendment throughout the bill to read, it strikes out 30 to 15 years and to allow legal to make technical changes and consistent where it appears on the bill. And that's my amendment, and I ask my colleagues for their support.
Senators, just to be very clear, so every reference to 30 will be struck at?
Yes, sir.
Say 15.
Yes.
Okay,
so amendment throughout the bill to read is what was incorporated, and then strike out 30 to 15. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the amendment, are there anybody wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Tina Rose, good lady from Pago Bay, go ahead.
Mingila Pago Bay.
Pago Bay.
I'm going to coin that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. While I appreciate the intent of this proposed amendment, Mr. Speaker, I still want to listen to what my other colleagues have to say, is because the whole impetus of us trying to revert back to what we originally had many decades ago, and the efforts of lease agreements, the return of investment to recruit what money is put in to build something and to work something, maybe definitely more than what is given today at 5 years. And when we talk, like for example, the activities that are happening at the Guam International Airport Authority, I remember clearly when one of the folks from FAA came up to me and said, if you want to do Guam justice and promote its efforts of improving the runway and the airport opportunities itself, you better revisit that lease agreement that you have in law right now. And I understood it clearly, like the minimum to look at would be at least 20 to 30 years. So 25 to 30 years. So Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, I'm just going to look at this and see what else my colleagues have to say, but I do have reservations on this amendment. Cesar Spasi.
Thank you, ma'am. On the amendment, anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment? Gentlelady from Doña.
Mr. Speaker, I support any amendment, including this one, that is going to bring this term down from 30 years to 15, but I ultimately support the original because no agency is currently prevented from long-term leases. We have them all over. We've had them forever. They are allowed for long-term leases. Previous legislatures, because of abuse, had insisted that before they do a long-term lease, they are going to give notice to everyone. They are going to state why it has to be that long. Why for that? And this amendment gives a blanket, it's a blanket approval, a blanket authority for all agencies. It's not specific to any particular type of industry that might require a long-term leases, like the example they like to use is a hangar, or other where they're going to put in multi-million-dollar investments. That's not even a requirement, that there's going to be a multi-million-dollar investment, that so many people are going to be hired. There are no requirements if this bill passes. It simply says, you 4 or 3 people that constitute a quorum for a board can make this decision instead of the legislature. This is a legislature decision, not just on Guam, but in very many places, but especially on Guam. And they have protected that because, not just because of past abuses, but because of the value of land on Guam, and because of the difficulty in predicting how these investments are going to turn out over the years. And we've seen so many where we are tied into a lease, and we, the next generation, we look at it and we say, why did they do that? How did they do that? They did that because only they had to agree to that. Right now, under law, if you're going to enter into a year longer than 5 years, the people of Guam, through their elected officials, they get a say. They don't have a say in who gets appointed to boards. They do not have a say in who gets removed or put on boards. They don't have that kind of say. They can remove us any day they want if they don't like what we are doing. If we give their land away in the bad deals that they have seen over the years and have responded in the voting booths. This is a protection for them against corruption, against a risk. And all these long-term investments, they might turn out great, and that's why we allow for them by law right now. They are also a risk because we cannot predict the future. We cannot predict what we might need that land for, that is even more critical. We cannot predict that the value of whatever we've entered into is going to skyrocket in 5 years, as we have seen in the technology industry. And that we are able to renegotiate leases based on new information, changing markets, and give the people of Guam much better deals. So, but because this amendment brings the 30 down to 15, that's more reasonable than the 30. It gives the people of Guam more protection, more transparency, a little less risk. And so I support this amendment. Si Diyos masi.
Thank you, ma'am. On the amendment, anybody else wishing to speak on the amendment? Senator Tiger, you want to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleagues who spoke on that, and those who are still, not sure on where to go on this. But it's important that economic risks and opportunity costs that are not hindered by the ability for us to go back and review after 15 years. Like I said earlier, it's a whole generation, 30 years. So having that economic risk and opportunity costs are always in consideration for any business. My goodness, I'm a Republican. I've owned several businesses. I know what it takes to recover cost. And I think this initiative for areas in the government has more of an accountability to it than, and being able to revisit it every 15 rather than 30. So I ask my colleagues for their support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Barnes, Munya Barnes, you expressed the concern, but you didn't outright express an objection to it. Okay, so there are no objections to this. Okay, on the tie degree amendment. No objections. Amendment passes. Senator Tiger, you still have the floor.
Si Diyos masi to my colleagues, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time, I think I spoke on the bill. There are still some concerns in the bill that I have reservations on myself, but I'm more comfortable now that we have lowered it down to 15, and I look forward to the other amendments that may be proffered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the bill as amended. Okay, the good gentleman from Momutotumairi, you're recognized.
Half a day, everyone. Welcome to the new legislature. Today I rise to offer support for bill number 8-38. I think it's a necessary change for the long-term growth of our business sectors and for these people that want to make this investment in our island. To that end, today I rise to offer a critical amendment to bill number 838, an amendment rooted in fairness, common sense, and economic stability for our local businesses and workforce. Over the years, many of our local companies have invested significantly in government lease property, transforming these lands into vibrant centers of employment, economic activity, and community life. These businesses have become responsible tenants, reliable employers, and strong contributors to our economy. They have diligently complied with lease terms, invested in infrastructure improvements, and created stable jobs for our people. My amendment seeks to acknowledge and reward that long-standing commitment. Under this provision, any tenant who has continuously occupied government lease property in good standing for at least 15 years would qualify for a lease renewal without the uncertainty and disruption of a competitive rebidding process. These tenants would be offered renewal terms of up to 30 years, ensuring stability and continuity for the businesses and their employees. It's important to emphasize this amendment is about protecting good businesses and good jobs. These are businesses that have proven their reliability and have genuinely invested in Guam's economy and Guam's people. Forcing these long-standing businesses into competitive rebids could unnecessarily put them at risk of closure, inevitably leading to job losses and economic disruption. This amendment does not shelter tenants who have failed to meet their obligation, nor does it interfere with publicly declared redevelopment plans. Instead, it promotes fairness and stability, rewarding businesses that have responsibly invested in our island for decades. Let us support this amendment as a gesture of appreciation to the businesses that have contributed positively to our community and our economy. Let's secure jobs, safeguard economic continuity, and ensure fairness and respect in government leasing policies. Thank you, my colleagues. I put forth this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment proffered by the good gentleman from Momototo Mighty, is there anybody wishing to speak? Senator Tairigu, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I'm looking at this amendment, it totally, contradicts the previous amendment that this body just passed by maintaining a 15-year lease. So I have to stand, very simply put, Mr. Speaker, to just object to this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the amendment by the good gentleman from Momototo Mighty, anybody else wish to speak? Does anybody else wish to speak? Gentlelady from Zonia, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker. I rise in objection to this amendment. This amendment, because of its words, it says, it would grandfather all existing leases that are less than 15 years and extend them without being subject to a competitive rebidding process. One of the things that people tell me why we can attract business here on Guam, when not all countries can attract business, is because we abide by a rule of law. Because our procurement, according to the law, is supposed to be competitive and fair. That we would give notice to everyone that this is an opportunity that you can all bid on. And the best deal for the people of Guam is what we are going to award. So of course, I think the legislature, we should all join in objecting to something that would blatantly remove the competitive bidding process. And again, allow an agency to set any rental rate adjustment that it deems necessary, such as 0 for leases set 15 years ago. This is the problem that we've seen in some leases. This is not made up. These are things that the auditor has audited. Some of the reports that he has sent to us and to the people of Guam show that we are continuing leases based on fair market value that was established decades ago. And that's not fair. It's not fair to the people of Guam. It's not fair to other businesses who would compete if given the opportunity. It says that without being subject to a competitive rebidding process, that's going to give us fairness and stability. I think it gives us absolutely the opposite. It makes a board decide whether they like this person or they don't, and they can extend the lease or not. They set any rental rate adjustment that they want, and this is way after the procurement process for that lease took place. Normally, it's the procurement process that's going to tell you what the rental rate adjustments are going to be. So I just really believe that this lease, I can definitely see that it would favor existing companies. I just don't think that making these leases non-competitive, not ensuring that we're going to receive value for them, for the people of Guam, not even knowing who they are while we are debating this, I don't believe that that is in the interest of the people of Guam at all. It's definitely in the interest of some companies, maybe not all, but definitely some. But those companies can absolutely compete like all the rest. We can do this in a fair way. This is how we want to attract business, by being consistent and fair, not arbitrary and changing the rules in the middle of the game. Situs Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. On the amendment, anybody else wishing to speak? The gentleman from EPEN.
Sidos Masi, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise in opposition of the amendment as well. You know, I get the intent of the bill as a whole, even though I don't agree with the version before we amended it. But the gist of the bill seems to be that we are missing out on these opportunities with these big businesses to enter into long-term leases so that, you know, allegedly the government of Guam, the people of Guam could benefit. But this amendment does the exact opposite of that. And so I would like to pose a question to the author, if he would so yield. And the question is, who are the grandfathered leaseholders that would benefit from this amendment? Is he able to share with the body any examples of any companies who are grandfather leaseholders who would, through this amendment, be allowed to renew their leases for up to 30 years without those said leases being competitively bid out?
You posing that question to the author of the amendment?
If I could, Mr. Speaker.
Would the author yield to the question?
What was the question, Mr. Speaker?
Senator Barr, can you go ahead and repeat the question, please?
The question is, are you able to identify any of the grandfathered leaseholders that would benefit from the passage of this amendment?
No, I cannot, sir. I just know it would help some businesses that are already existing as exercise in stability, but I do not have any particular business in mind when I think about this.
Will that satisfy you?
I guess so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I also oppose the amendment because we just got done amending the bill to reduce the number of years from 30 down to 15. And so this amendment would give the benefit to these grandfather leaseholders. They wouldn't even be confined by the limits that are now in the actual bill. And to allow these grandfather leaseholders to be granted a lease renewal without legislative approval, without even a competitive rebidding process, for me, it just doesn't pass the smell test at all. Mutung a day. It's very stinky, Mr. Speaker, with all due respect. Because again, if the intent of this body through this bill and other measures that are before it is to give the people of Guam the best value, the best investment, the best return on their properties, this amendment does not do that. This amendment, to me, reeks of special interest. It reeks of the pari-pari system. That, oh, you have an existing lease, don't worry, we're gonna stick in an amendment and then you're gonna be allowed to renew that lease. And you know, you don't worry, you're not gonna have to even put it out to bid. We're just gonna rubber stamp that. And so I asked my colleagues you just read the amendment right there and it does exactly what I said, which is why I oppose it. Sidos Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, anybody else want to speak on this amendment? Ma'am, you spoke on it already.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to raise a point of order. I believe this amendment is not germane to the bill. It extends the bill it extends lease terms, like all kinds of terms, and rental rates way beyond the scope of what was discussed at any public hearing, which was just the length of a lease.
I had the same concern. You know, but more pressing, seems to be something wrong with our sound system. So while I'm having AV check on our sound system, take a break. I'm gonna have a consult with legal counsel on the germaneness of the amendment. Okay, so we're gonna take a couple-minute recess. Legislature is back in session. Colleagues, thank you very much for the opportunity to get our audio fixed. But in that also, there was a concern that was raised by one of our colleagues with regards to whether or not this amendment, for lack of a term, is germane to the discussion. Concern, quite honestly, that I had as well. And in talking to legal counsel, while there seems to be some nexus of the amendment to the bill, there is still issues that this bill would, as progressive, moving forward as it is, the amendment proposed would actually be, would take into some consideration retroactivity, which is a concern because it also needs further discussion from stakeholders on how this was going to affect them. And since we can't bring them in here, and I'm not inclined to be able to make a ruling or to let things go without discussion from stakeholders, which is what we're supposed to do. Anyways, I'm going to rule that this amendment is non-germane, is out of order. Okay, so Senator from Mamong Totomaiti, you still have the floor though, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I still rise in support of this bill. I think what this bill is doing is necessary. I think it's important to allow our business community who's investing in Guam for us to invest our trust in them as well, and to give them these leases that are much better to have solid long-term planning, gives you a sense of confidence to invest your hard-earned money back into the business, back into the island, back into the community. And I support and commend the author of this legislation for putting it forward. I support this amendment, I support this bill, and I ask my colleagues to also support this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill as amended, anybody wishing to speak? Senator Calvo, good lady from Barragata, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, and honored members of the public, I rise today in full support of the amended Bill number 8-38 COR, a measure that seeks to modernize the way we manage commercial leasing of public real property here in Guam. This bill represents an important step in improving the efficiency of our government, promoting economic growth, and providing long-term stability for businesses and investors in our community. As a legislator, my ultimate priority is to ensure that the policies we enact serve the long-term interests of the people of Guam. And I firmly believe that this bill does exactly that. The intent of this bill is clear. It seeks to extend the maximum lease term for commercial property for 5 years, and now amended to 30, but now amended to 15 years. This is an essential change that will foster long-term investment and provide stability in a way that benefits both private sector, developers, and the government of Guam. By increasing the lease term, we are ensuring that businesses have the security they need to plan for future growth. These long-term commitments are essential for large-scale development projects, infrastructure investments, and other initiatives that require the kind of predictability that a 15-year lease provides. For far too long, the current 5-year lease term has limited the ability of both businesses and the government to make significant long-term commitment. The 5-year term is simply too short for businesses to effectively and efficiently invest in our island and develop projects that require a longer horizon. With this bill, we are sending a strong message to the private sector and our potential investors, that Guam is open for business and that we are ready to partner with them in building a stronger, more prosperous economy. In addition to providing stability for businesses, this bill offers significant benefits to the government of Guam. By extending the lease term, we allow for more efficient and long-term management of our public land. Public lands are a valuable resource, and we must make sure that they are being used in a way that supports our community needs. This bill allows us to enter into leases that provide a clearer path for the development of infrastructure and other critical projects, while still allowing flexibility in how those projects evolve over time. It is a balance of commitment and flexibility, a balance that is necessary to ensure that we are meeting both immediate and long-term needs. It's also important to note that this bill provides an opportunity for better planning. In today's world, businesses are often required to make strategic decisions that involve significant investments of capital and time. This can only happen when they have certainty and security in their land leases. By providing long-term lease terms, we are aligning our policy with the needs of modern business practices and development projects. We are also ensuring that the resources of our island are being used in a thoughtful and strategic way that benefits everyone. Let me be clear, this bill is not about giving away land. It is about responsibly managing the land that we have, ensuring that it serves the greater good of our community while attracting and supporting investment that creates jobs, spurs economic growth, and improves the quality of life for all of us here in Guam. We have a duty to use our land in a way that maximizes its potential, and this bill allows us to do that in a way that also provides long-term benefits to our people. Now, I know that there are some who may have concerns about extending the lease term. I, for one, was in the same boat. But if you really think about it, no big investors will come to Guam. We cannot push for economic growth if we tie ourselves up. It is understandable that any change of this nature will be met with questions, especially when it comes to the long-term impact on public resources. This bill is not about reducing oversight because we still have control, but rather about improving the process and providing clarity for future development and investment. In closing, I strongly believe that Bill 838, especially that now that it's amended down to 15 years, is a critical step towards creating a more business-friendly environment here in Guam. By extending the lease term from 5 to 15 years, we provide stability, certainty, and opportunity needed to attract new investment, foster economic growth, and create jobs. This is a positive move for our island and one that will benefit generations to come. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this important piece of legislation. Let us work together to build a more prosperous future for Guam, for our people, a future where we responsibly manage our land, promote economic growth, and continue to improve quality of life for all of our residents, a future of balance, a future of progress for the people of Guam. Thank you very much. Sidhu Usmasi.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill as amended, is there anybody else that wishes to speak? What amendment? No amendment. On the bill as amended, anybody wishing to speak? Senator, good senator from EPAN?
Si Dosmasi, Mr. Speaker, and buenas anafade to the people of Guam. Thank you for watching. I kind of first want to just acknowledge the amended version of this bill is it's a huge change in the direction that the legislatures prior to this one have taken. So we've essentially, through amending this bill, gone from 5 to 15 years. So I support the amendment from Senator Taitigui, and I thank her for maybe inadvertently softening my stance in opposition to this bill, because last night when I was reading the bill as read, I was like, oh, that Pata said it on, never mind. But she's made it a little more reasonable with 15 years. However, there still is in the bill, I believe, according to my read, the ability to enter into leases much longer than 15 years. There still is the ability in this bill, at least according to my read, for the government of Guam to enter into 20-year leases, 30-year leases, 40-year leases, even 50-year leases, even 100-year leases. This bill allows for that without legislative approval. I think that's very key, because if you go into the bill on page 3, the entire section that requires legislative approval for what we call exceptional term contracts has been deleted, struck through. Do not pass go, does not apply anymore if this bill passes. But the mechanism for exceptional term contracts remains in the bill, and it basically says exceptional term contracts, the chief procurement officer, the director of public works, the head of a purchasing agency, basically for an exceptional term contract, all that needs to happen is for the governor, or in the case of an autonomous agency, a board of directors, to make a written determination of need. And essentially, in a very simple way to explain it, just send an email to the Speaker of the Legislature, and they would then be green lighted to proceed, as long as they provided a simple piece of paper that says, hey, this is why we want a 75-year lease for our party, or whatever the case may be. So even as amended, even though we've brought the term from 30 years down to 15 years, there absolutely still is in this bill the ability for much longer leases to be entered into. And all that has to be done is they just push send on an email and send a determination of need over to the legislature. And I don't know if, you know, anybody watching thinks I might be exaggerating with the length of these leases, but if you attend these public hearings and you listen to the testimony, it's very apparent that even 30 years is not long enough for a lot of these entities who are now coming before the legislature, and even in testimony on this particular measure are saying that, oh, what about 50 years? What about 60 years? So I just want to caution that even though the gentle lady from Tamuning amended the bill and made it a little more reasonable, in my opinion, it's still a dangerous piece of legislation, because we have removed the legislative approval of 4 leases which are for exceptional term contracts. And I am not one to come into this body as a duly elected representative of the people and shoot ourselves in the foot and take away our authorities and our abilities that, you know, we have, so that we can act as a checks and balances on the other branches of government. And so I have an amendment, and I hope my colleagues would support it, because I think I've done a good job in explaining that without legislative approval of exceptional term leases, this bill will absolutely allow for leases far beyond 15 years. And the process is as simple as, like I said, sending the speaker an email. And so, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to, if I may, proffer the amendment. Could I just get a second recess to get the amendment?
1 minute recess. We're back on. Senator Barnett. Senator Barnett.
Mr. Speaker. So the amendment is for lines 13 to 26, and it amends the bill to read, well, basically it just restores the section that was struck out. If you look at the bill, starting on page 3, line 7, section D, our ability to approve these exceptional term contracts was completely stricken from the bill. So my amendment moves to restore that language and thus restore our ability to, and I want to just, if I could just kind of go into the amendment, it does set a timeline because there's been this narrative that exceptional term leases and you know, arrangements that some might think are good deals die at the legislature's doorstep. But I would agree with the good senator from Jotnia is that a lot of we're not getting these requests. We're not getting these requests, and it's my opinion that we're not getting them because when we do and we start to vet a lot of what's going on, it just doesn't hold up. I mean, we saw this with the case of the lease for Eagles Field. We never got the copy because it didn't hold up and it would not withstand the scrutiny. But our ability to approve these exceptional term leases does come with conditions. And you can see here, it says in Section 1, the legislature in Guam shall take action to approve or disapprove the commercial contract, lease, permit, or license. So we are not interjecting ourselves into negotiations. We get the final product, and then we have 60 days, 60 calendar days from the date of filing with the speaker to approve these arrangements. And so I think it's very prudent, Mr. Speaker. I don't think anyone signed up here today to pass a bill that would allow for, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100-year leases, even 1,000-year leases can be done with this bill. And so I just ask that we respect our abilities here in the legislature, especially when it comes to land transactions. You know, there's a reason why the land transactions come to the people's house. We don't have a lot of land out there. You know what I mean? This is not California. This is not Texas where, you know, there's just land all over the place. And maybe arrangements there because of the plentifulness of the land don't warrant such scrutiny, but they do here because this is not the US, this is Guam. And we have a responsibility that this bill attempts to take out, sir. So I ask that my colleagues support the amendment and support our ability to vet these leases. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. There is an amendment on the floor to amend subsection 5127D of the bill so that it basically, what it does is it reinstates the language that has been stricken from there. Okay, on the amendment, Senator, the good Senator from Tumuning, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, first of all, I want to discuss the retiring speakers, what I believe is non-supported whatsoever with the change that we made from 30 years to 15 years. That the requirement for the exceptional use be verified and basically sent in order to be able to execute the lease. Otherwise, why would we have even bothered? From going to 30 to 15 years with the good amendment that was proffered. This bill as it stands will be 15 years. The reason for the removal of the legislative approval, Mr. Speaker, is coming full circle. When I attended the public hearing of this bill, it was notable that the author of the legislation in the 31st Guam Legislature, which I voted for, came before this body and said, while well-intended, This has been a deal breaker and has stifled any possibilities of long-term investment in our island. Mr. Speaker, if we restore this language, we're just going back to where we were, and there'd be no necessity for this bill. The bottom line is this. The reason why leases, which require long-term for significant investment, die at the doorstep of the legislature is when proposals are made by businesses to try to bring prosperity to our island by investing in property, putting millions of dollars in investment to build whatever purpose they're asking to lease the property for. That doesn't come just because they woke up one morning and sat down and wrote a few words on a napkin and decided that, hey, let me go to the government and say a special need is required here. Here's what I wrote from Denny's. Can we do this? These type of investments require attorneys to draw up contracts. They require research to make sure whatever business endeavor they're going to can be viable. Lots of times, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, these contracts have hundreds of thousands or maybe even up to millions of dollars of investment and research and attorney's fees and others who put these arrangements together. So to go through all that entire process and to make a contractual agreement and have spent all that time and all that money and all that man hours and manpower to do that can be just whisked away because the legislature convenes and says no. Now, as my good friend from Tamuning in Jonestown mentioned even during the discussion on his bill that will be heard a later time, I'm not going to elaborate on it, I know that's not the rule, but at least it's a similar discussion, that we have oversight over these agencies, and the good senator from Barragata mentioned that. We have confirmation, authority, and advice and consent to these individuals on boards who are making these decisions. These boards have disclosure requirements. There's a lot of protections that are put in place for our government to operate and make these considerations. Once again, I see nothing just because of the fact that the demonstration is in the bill that triggers the opportunity, extends anything beyond what the strict four corners of this bill are, which are the 15 years. But to remove this legislative authority and to reinstate it, if I were the author and that would pass, I'll just put the bill back in committee because it's useless, or put it in the inactive file. What we're trying to do here by taking this leap in undoing what was done before for 30 years or beyond leases because of concerns is to reset. Reset at 15 years to see if we can generate the interest, if we can set a timeline that can be acceptable for the investment that individual companies want to make. Mr. Speaker, time and time again, and it's really kind of interesting, because even during the campaign, when we go to the chamber and we go to other places we're invited to, every time we ask or answer a question, what has stifled investment on Guam? The 5-year limit. It's not a guess that there's been a lot of opportunity where people, companies and businesses outside and inside want to invest in Guam. But the reason why there's been no activity for the longest time is because they will not take a risk at 5 years. No responsible business person would take a risk at 5 years and hope for the best afterwards. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe once again should we go down this road, we are just defeating the purpose, and it's just not correct to make the assumption that when an offer is made to the government and an opportunity is sought to do business with the government, that it's just a simple, hey, how you doing? I want to build this over here. No. To go through the process of making an absolute, legit, bona fide lease agreement for whatever special interest entity or whatever special project that's going to be done is going to be done with thousands, if not millions of dollars investment. And any company that's worth their salt, or their board of directors, or anybody else who would take that risk is not going to do that based on running the gauntlet of the legislature. So for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I object to this amendment.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the amendment, good Senator from Tumuning, gentlelady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I saw this amendment, and I looked a little bit deeper into this, I saw this section that said exceptional term contracts. And I was wondering, what's the difference between exceptional term contracts and just a regular contract? So I decided to look it up, and the explanation or definition for exceptional term contracts reads, typically refers to a contract with unique or extraordinary provisions that deviate from standard practices. These contracts might include special term tailored to specific circumstances, such as extended durations, unusual payment structures, or unique performance requirements. They are often used in cases where standard contracts cannot adequately address the needs for the parties involved. And then I looked at the definition for just a regular contract, which defines it as a regular contract, on the other hand, follows standard terms and conditions commonly used in similar agreements. It adheres to established norms and practices with predictable provisions regarding payment, duration, and obligation. The last thing I would like to see is one of our agencies or decide to go into an exceptional term agreement and bypass what we're trying to do here, and that is allow for a 15-year contract. So if I can, Mr. Speaker, just wanted to clarify that with legal, if any of these autonomous agencies or agencies that we're giving this 15-year, can they actually bypass the 15 years because their contract is considered exceptional term contract. So if I can take 1 minute just to clarify with legal.
Okay, we'll take a 1 minute recess so you can clarify with legal. 1 minute recess. Legislation back from recess. When we went on recess, Senator Tidy, will you stay at the floor, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask that we set aside this bill, Bill 8-38, and move on to the next bill. There's some things that we need to hash out based on legal's interpretation and to ensure that we stay within the 15 years for all contracts, regardless if it's regular contract or an exceptional one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I motion that we set this aside,
Notwithstanding.
notwithstanding.
On that motion, though, is set aside, what, be specific about what you want to do with the bill. Set aside it, put it to the bottom.
Mr. Speaker, I make a motion notwithstanding to set aside Bill 8-38 and come back to that
When?
at a later time.
Okay, well, there was a notwithstanding motion to set aside the bill. There is an objection to the motion to setting aside. Okay, all those in favor of setting aside the bill? All those in favor of setting aside the bill, so to send it back to committee to be worked on, please indicate by raising your hand. Send it back to committee.
Mr. Chair, point of information, I didn't say to send it back to committee, just to send it back to the, lower, actually, not at the bottom, but, once we can hash out this, and then so we, for the sake of time, move forward with the other bills.
Okay, so
But
let's
not
clarify.
to set it back to committee, just to set it aside for right now,
Okay,
okay?
so move it down into the
Yeah,
agenda.
just to move it down, to set it aside right now, not into committee, though.
Okay, so then I stand corrected. The motion is to
Just set it aside,
set it aside
yeah.
and keep it in the agenda.
Keep it on the agenda
Once it's clean,
so
then
that
we
we
bring
can
it back
hash
up
this
for
out to
discussion.
clarify it, yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's the motion. All right? All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion fails. You still have the floor, Senator Tidy?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I
On
thought
the amendment, remember? It's on the amendment.
on the amendment, sir.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment, we had an opportunity to discuss with legal on legal's interpretation. I mean, she is an attorney, she would know. And it clearly states that this amendment would ensure that anyone who's going into an exceptional term contract would actually allow it to go further than 15 years because it's exceptional. Even when it comes down to the payment plan, all exceptional. What the amendment will do, Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, is to maintain that 15 years. And if they go into a exceptional term contract, that they would have to follow the guidelines of going through the legislature to go beyond 15 years. If we don't put this section, this amendment into the bill, then any exceptional term contract that can be deemed by between any agency and a private company, they can give whatever, they can make it 100 years. 100 years. And I believe everybody here was in agreement, pretty much. Nobody objected from changing it to 5 years to changing it from 30 years to 15. And now here's a circumstance where exceptional term contract in the bill is the loophole. Is the loophole to allow a longer term contract. I'm pretty sure everyone knows that now. And it's a decision they will have to make. This is the way to protect the agreement of keeping it to 15 years. Anything above that, like anything else, it would have to come to the legislature. So I stand in full support of this amendment. It makes sense. It makes us accountable. And it makes you accountable because you voted for 15. You didn't vote for 30. You didn't vote for 16, 17. You voted for 15. So I stand in full support of this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the amendment, on the Barnett amendment, okay, we're still on that. Any other senator wishing to speak on the Barnett amendment? Good Senator from Barragata Heights, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I rise in support of this.
Madam?
I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker. My
Thank you.
apologies.
I'll get a haircut.
Yeah, I was focusing on what I was going to say. So, yeah, so basically, I rise in support of this amendment. And it wasn't too long ago that we went through this whole process where the legislature vetted what is called the undersea cable agreements. And because of that dialogue, I believe that Guam got a really good deal out of it. So if I can just jog people's memory, in the past, these undersea cables were going at least the lease for the land where it landed, the lease for the undersea, I guess underwater where it landed, was going at a really low price. I believe it was $10,000. And we're talking about these multinational companies that are making billions of dollars. And it was through the legislative process where we were able to highlight how undervalued we were assessing these contracts. And it was also agreed to by the companies. So there is a way forward for these agreements to take place where both parties win. And so that's why this element here does not need to be touched, I believe, because we can still obtain the best value for our people. And we're talking about long-term contracts. So these are exceptional term contracts beyond 15 years. And so we could still provide the stability for these companies and get the most out of it. So the one thing I would like to caution people, so there's something called undersea mining, right? Deep sea mining. And so, this is something that, we need to think about what, without knowing what specific contract we're getting into. I think it's really critical that it has as much transparency as possible. And the legislature is the place for a lot of dialogue to happen, right? So, because we represent the people and all their concerns. And so that's why I think this part of the law should not be touched, because if we're talking about something that we're going to get into for, a long time past our time here in office, I want to sleep well at night, and I hope all of you do, knowing that we did not short the people, we did not short our island, because our island is so valuable. We are so valuable. We're unique, and we should work towards that, no matter in what area we're talking about. When we're dealing with contracts, just because it's a multinational company doesn't mean that we should roll over. We need to negotiate for the best value for our people, and I think that's what this part of the bill does. So it's not going to take away the opportunities. It's going to raise the level of negotiation, and that's what we need to strive for as a people. And so I rise in full support to restore the language for contracts that are going beyond 15 years, because they are the ones that we need to vet the most. and not turn a blind eye. So I ask the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Gentlelady from Pago Bay, Mingila.
Manila, Pago Bay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome.
Literally, Mr. Speaker, I want to rise to join my good primo or brother from Hagatnya or Tamuning, as he calls it, CMD, in registering my respectful objection to this amendment. Because I want to also, as he mentioned earlier, there was a lesson shared with us by the author, the main author of this law, which was Senator Tom Ada, that we now seek to update. I literally want to say, Mr. Speaker, that I literally applaud former Senator Tom Ada for bringing this real road wisdom to this body to let us know that while he felt at the time back then that this 5-year cap and legislative approval was the right thing to do, after he himself tried to work this in a government agency, I want you to know, Mr. Speaker, that he himself saw firsthand how this can hamper efforts to secure private investments. How also that it can be viewed as unreasonable and unworkable for our potential tenants and leases. So, you know, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that there's already been a compromise adopted for this measure. And, you know, nothing in this bill will take away this body's oversight or responsibility to our own people. You know, we can still uncover corruption. We can still advise, and most of all, we still have the opportunity to change our laws for the better. I've always said, Mr. Speaker, what may have been good back then may not be so good today. What may have been bad back then is much better today, and vice versa, right? So, I want to say, but for today, I really personally believe that we should accept the wise words from our former colleague, Senator Tom Ada, who literally had the rare opportunity to see his law in action, and he's advising us to change course. So, as I object to this amendment as proffered by the senator from Talafofu, I want to say it's important to realize that any time in this body, laws can be created, it can be amended, it can be repealed, it can be repealed and reenacted and added onto. And if the good author of this law that we are working on right now says, you know what I said and did back then is not the right thing to do today, you got to change it, Mr. Speaker, that's telling. And I've worked with that for our former senator from Mingilao for many terms. And I really appreciate it when he said, we got to revisit it, we got to look at it, and we got to change it, because what I did back then may have been good for back then, but not so good today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to respectfully object to this amendment. Sana Masi.
Thank you, Senator. On the Barnett Amendment, are there any other senators willing to speak? You haven't spoken yet, so go ahead, Senator Tulay. Good Senator from Doña? You haven't spoken on the Barnett Amendment yet. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker. This amendment allows us to discuss what the bill really does. In addition, as the title says, to changing the current maximum term of leases from 5 to 15 years, the title doesn't show that the bill also allows us to go or longer, that an agency can now lease out property, government of Guam property, which used to be the exclusive authority of the legislature, still is the exclusive authority of the legislature, unless we delegate it out. And by this bill, they intend to delegate it out to all these agencies, some of them that act with 3 people as quorum, to lease out government property now from, instead of what used to be maximum of 5 without legislative approval, to 15 without any legislative approval. No need for what currently is needed in the exceptional term contracts, that they must justify those leases over 5 years by a quantifiable sum. No need to do that, no need to justify. We just allow them to lease over 15 years. And the bill also allows for any lease over 15 years, they allow the agencies to do that too by subsection B on page 2, exceptional term contracts for terms longer than otherwise allowed by this section, which is now 15 years. For any term longer than 15 years, the agencies can do it as long as they put out a determination of need. That's it, and they send it to us. No longer, if this amendment doesn't pass, that determination of need or that contract that goes for much longer than 15 years have to have legislative approval. So I believe if we are going to go over the 15 years, then why not have legislative approval? This puts back into the statute what the bill, I think, mistakenly took out. And that's in good faith, that we should put it back in to restore that we are going to put a maximum on the terms of leases and not allow a gigantic loophole and not remove legislative approval for leases that exceed this maximum 15 years. And the legislative approval process that's in current law that allows for long-term leases right now is so easy. It says, you go all the way, agency. You just publish your determination of need, send it to the legislature, and you go all the way through your procurement process until you get a contract. And at the end, that means you've been competitive, you've done everything according to the procurement law, and at the end, you send that down here for final legislative approval. Legislature must do that within 60 days. 60 days, that's just 2 months. 60 days to approve a contract longer than 15 years, hopefully for multi-millions of dollars. I think it's worth it. 60 days. They can't even get through their procurement process in 60 days. There's no way. So to add on a 60-day legislative approval when it comes to the land of the people, when it comes to multi-million-dollar contracts, when it comes to past experience with corruption, when it comes to why was this law put in the first place, that's because they had in front of them leases that looked like terrible, bad deals for the people of Guam that we could not get out of, that we were spending millions of dollars and have spent millions of dollars, and in some cases continue to spend millions of dollars to try to get out of, so we can rebid and get better deals. And because, let's face it, boards who are making these decisions, again, we're not requiring anything of them in this bill. We're not requiring them to have these kind of terms, that it has to be a good deal. We're not requiring anything except, and we know that they can be bullied by governors, obviously, to do what certain governors want. And I'm not even saying anything about this governor, any governor. They also can be bullied by big business, and we have seen that as well. When the money is at stake, that's how we ended up in some of these contracts. The legislature is charged with managing government lands. We can do both. We can allow a little over 5 years to 15 years, but everything over that the legislature is going to look at before it's final. Look at the deal. What legislature, we have this, it was done, I think, with the Cementon deal at the port. So there's no reason we can't do it again. If it's a good deal, it's a good deal. If we really need that industry, we are going to jump on it faster than anyone. If we think, and we need a hangar up at the airport, there is nothing to prevent the airport administration from sending a determination of need for hangars, for maintenance, right now, announcing those, making them competitive. One company said, according to the testimony of the airport, that 30 years was fine with them. One company said, no, 50 years. And now the airport, I don't know, but these personal communication with different companies and making the laws match what that certain company wants is very suspect to me. I feel very uncomfortable with that. So I think allowing them to continue with a competitive bid, allowing it to come back down here for us to look at one more time within 60 days is perfectly reasonable. It's what the people of Guam deserve. Why should we delegate our entire authority over land? Like delegating, we've got two jobs here, land and money. Why would we do that? What are we here for if we can't ensure that for the people of Guam, if we can't protect them, if we can't do what they put us here for? Make sure they don't get ripped off again. Make sure there's no corruption. That's all. Make it transparent. Make sure they can actually see the terms of the deal before we are obliged to them. It's really, actually amazingly hard to see what has transpired in some of these agencies, even up to now with our open government law, our requirements. We've had leases extended for long periods of time without any, not even a drop of public information out there. So I think this is a great protection. And those people that put it into place, even Senator Atta that was down here, that former Senator Atta, he said there should be parameters. He said it then and he says it now, there should be parameters, but the bill gives no parameters, zero. So I think as a compromise, without any parameters up to 15 years, that after 15 years, they should at least let the people of Guam know what exactly the deal is, let the legislature know what the deal is, and let the legislature know in the end, this is a good deal, and embrace it. So I very much support this amendment. Without this amendment, the bill is not at all what it says. It doesn't extend from 5 to 15 years. It extends 5 to 15 years or longer at the sole discretion of the agency. Just Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the Barnett amendment, are there any other senators wishing to speak? Are there any other senators wishing to speak? Senator, would you like to close?
Sijos Masi, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to close on my amendment, and want to thank my colleagues for the very hearty and robust debate. This is what it's all about, standing up and, speaking your case. So Sijus Masi for that. One of the retiring speakers, and I've heard it from a couple of them actually today, is this narrative that we will always have oversight. But I would say, what good is oversight after the deed is done? The incinerator contract, YTK, these are all examples of what happens when the legislature is not involved. And I want to go back and if we could just maybe explain the amendment, because there was, I felt like there was some confusion and we took a recess about exactly what the amendment does. So I just want to be very clear about what the amendment does for the people of Guam watching. This amendment basically reinstates what the bill takes out. The bill takes out legislative approval for exceptional term contracts. What is an exceptional term contract? In this case, an exceptional term contract is a contract for a term longer than otherwise allowed by this section. And this section is section 2, which allows for, now that we've amended the bill, 15-year leases. And so without this amendment, without the legislative involvement, I am absolutely correct that this bill, even as amended, even with a compromise that the new majority should be celebrating as a win. This is a huge departure to hear from members who had no objection to this amendment. Members who have been very consistent in saying, 5 years it's what we do. So we have compromised and we've said, okay, 15 years, but anything above that, 15 years and 1 day, the legislature should absolutely be involved. And as the bill is written, we are absolutely not. It is exactly as I said. All that the agencies would have to do is to email the good speaker from Barrigada and express their determination of need, and then proceed full steam ahead with no check and balance, no scrutiny, no involvement from this legislature. So that is what this amendment does. I don't know if it was a mistake to completely strike out this section. Prior experience would tell me it wasn't a mistake, but I wasn't there. But make no mistake, we absolutely as a body should put this back in so that we can vet any contracts that are exceptional term, in this case, meaning anything over the 15 years we are now going to allow should this amended bill pass. And let me remind you, that is a 10-year increase over what we currently allow. And although I still don't know if I support the 15 years, I have to say that's something. That's something. But anything over 15 years, I absolutely agree with a few of the retiring speakers. That's totally in our wheelhouse. This is something we should be involved in. We've seen what happens when the legislature doesn't have involvement, doesn't have scrutiny. And again, we would not be interrupting ongoing negotiations. We would just merely be looking at the completed product of a process for an exceptional term lease. And so, por favor, I ask my colleagues to support this amendment. This amendment is not just a great compromise on this issue, which we have really been butting heads on even in the 37th Guam Legislature. You know how hard we've disagreed on whether or not we want to extend the term of leases above 5 years. And so I ask for my colleagues' support, Mr. Speaker, as I'm out of time. Sijus Masi.
Thank you, sir. On the Barnett amendment, there has been an objection. There has been an objection. All those in favor of the Barnett amendment, please indicate by raising your hand. Amendment fails. Senator Barnett, you still have Okay. On the bill as amended, Senator Gumatauta, you are, a good senator from Talofofu. You're
Thank you,
recognized.
Mr. Speaker. I motion to call for the question.
There's a motion to call for the question. Okay. Okay. There's a motion to call for the question.
Roll call, please.
Roll call. Okay, you need three. Okay, no. Call for the question. 2, 3. Okay, so now there's a motion to call for the question. There has been an objection. Now the question is to basically stop all debate on this matter and to move forward and to send, then we will address sending it down to third reading. Okay? Is that understood? Okay? So, roll call.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. What would then happen to the amendments to the bill that we have yet to entertain?
It's no longer entertained.
Just to be clear, the call to question motion means that we are being censored from speaking further on this bill.
The call for the question basically means that no further discussion on this bill. Okay? So there has been a call for the question. It has been objected. There is a request for roll. Okay, 3 members had called for roll call. So with that, Madam Clerk, take roll call.
Vice Speaker Atta? Vice Speaker Atta, yay. Senator Barnett? Senator Barnett, nay. Speaker Blas?
No.
Speaker Blas?
Nay.
Nay. Senator Borja? Senator Borja, yay. Senator Calvo? Senator Calvo, nay. Senator Duenas? Senator Duenas, yay. Senator Gumatauta? Senator Gumatauta, yay. Senator Lujan? Senator Lujan, yay. Senator Munya Barnes? Senator Munya Barnes, yay. Senator Parkinson? Senator Parkinson, pass. Senator Perez? Senator Perez, nay. Senator Salas Matanani? Senator Salas Matanani, yay. Senator San Augustine? Senator San Augustine, yay. Senator Taitagui? Senator Taitagui, nay. Senator Terlahi? Senator Terlahi, nay. Senator Parkinson? Senator Parkinson, pass. Senator Parkinson? Senator Parkinson, nay.
On the motion to call for the question, there were 8 ayes, 7 nays. The ayes have it. Question has been called. There's no longer debate on Bill 8-38 COR. Senator San Augustine?
Mr. Speaker, no closure, just move it down to third reading. Thank you.
On the motion to move the 8-38 COR to the third reading, are there any objections? Okay, there is an objection. All those in favor of moving 8-38 COR to the third reading FAR, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion carries. A-38 COR has been moved to the third reading. We're going to move on to the next bill. Bill 10-38 COR. Good Senator from Talapovo, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I move to place Bill 10-38 COR as amended by the Committee on Finance and Government Operations on the third reading file and request for the opportunity to speak on the bill.
There is a motion to place Bill 10-38 COR to the third reading file, and he wishes to discuss it. So you can discuss it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity today to provide an overview of Bill 10-38 COR as amended. I wish to thank Chairman Chris Duenas and the Committee on Finance and Government Operations for their assistance in facilitating a public hearing on Bill 10-38 COR in late February and a markup meeting shortly thereafter. And if I can say that markup historically, sir, Mr. Speaker, very effective towards the work of this Guam Legislature. I appreciate them working closely with my office in amending the bill based on the testimonies that were received during the public hearing and recommendations offered during the subsequent markup meeting. The measure, as amended, proposes to establish a Government of Guam provided public safety and law enforcement officers line of duty benefit and the Public Safety and Law Enforcement Officers Line of Duty Benefit Fund. Bill 10-38 COR as amended relies on the framework and process that are in place through the establishment of the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, which provides a one-time benefit to eligible survivors of public safety officers whose deaths were the direct result of an injury sustained in the line of duty. Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Officers Benefit Program is authorized to award $448,575,000 for eligible deaths occurring during fiscal year 2025. The Public Safety Officers Benefit Program includes definitions for the terms public safety officer and law enforcement officer, which cover, but is not limited to, corrections officers, firefighters, trainee public safety and law enforcement officers, an individual involved in crime and juvenile delinquency control or reduction, or enforcement of the criminal laws such as police, probation, parole, and judicial officers. If approved, Mr. Speaker, the bill provides that if the death of a public safety or law enforcement officer in the line of duty qualifies for death benefits pursuant to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Public Safety Officers Benefits Program or its successor program, the public safety or law enforcement officer's survivor shall be entitled to a one-time death benefit of $100,000 from the Government of Guam, payable through the Public Safety and Law Enforcement Officers Line of Duty Death Benefit Fund. Mr. Speaker, the one-time death benefit authorized by Bill 10-38 COR, as amended, shall not reduce any other benefit that a public safety or law enforcement officer may be entitled to pursuant to Guam law or regulation. The bill further requires that the Department of Administration shall, within 90 days of enactment, to develop rules and regulations for the administration of the Public Safety and Law Enforcement Officers Line of Duty Benefit and the Public Safety and Law Enforcement Officers Line of Duty Benefit Fund. In the unfortunate event of an officer's death during the balance of this current fiscal year, the Government of Guam is authorized to expend general fund appropriations in fiscal year 2025 for death benefits that are issued consistent with the requirements of this bill. Mr. Speaker, building on my earlier comments on Bill 10-38 COR, I offer this proposal as an additional way this government can strengthen its support for our public safety and law enforcement officers and provide peace of mind for their families that wait for them at home following long shifts in service to all of the people of Guam. Mr. Speaker, while my hope is that our government will never have to issue one death benefit authorized under Bill 10-38 COR as amended, I also understand that we must be prepared to support the families of our public safety and law enforcement officers if and when that moment comes. With the provisions contained in Bill 10-38 COR as amended, adopting this policy can aid in our broader effort to increase the recruitment and retention of new public safety and law enforcement professionals in our U.S. territory. Offering this new benefit can potentially attract and keep job candidates to Guam's public safety and law enforcement agencies today and in the years to come, especially at a time, Mr. Speaker, when our government of Guam agencies continue to compete with federal and military public safety and law enforcement entities, both here and in other jurisdictions across our nation. Mr. Speaker, Bill 10-38 COR as amended acknowledges the dangerous work that is unique to our public safety and law enforcement officers and the support our government must provide to the families of our fallen officers at their greatest time of need. In closing, I would like to reiterate on the record some of the comments that were shared on the importance of recognizing our public safety and law enforcement officers who are routinely expected to manage intense, stressful, or delicate public safety situations. The Department of Youth Affairs offered that a public safety officer death benefit is long overdue and a testament to the keen recognition and acknowledgement that the very nature of law enforcement and public safety comes with inherent hazards that could have lifelong impacts on officers and their families, particularly in cases where an officer makes the ultimate sacrifice while in service to our people. The elected Attorney General of Guam, Mr. Speaker, stated that it is common sense that a community that expects law enforcement officers to place their lives on the line should also support their families if that public service cuts short their life. The AB Wampat Guam International Airport Authority commented that benefits for our public safety and law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty provide financial security for the families these officers may leave behind, provide financial assistance for funeral costs, and in a small way may give peace of mind to the officers and their families that there will be some financial reparation for the daily risk that they face and at their demise in the line of duty. The Department of Corrections wrote that Bill 10-38 COR amplifies the honor and respect for those public safety and law enforcement officers who have paid the ultimate sacrifice while in the line of duty. Guam Fire Department Chief Darren Burrier, he shared that Bill 10-38 COR is a testament to our dedication to the public servants who dedicated their lives to our safety, and that it is our duty to ensure that we as a society provide them with the security and peace of mind that they deserve. And Guam Police Department Chief Stephen Ignacio stated that the passage of this measure will send a strong message that we value the sacrifices made by our law enforcement officers and that we stand with them in ensuring that their families are protected in the event of a tragedy. With that, Mr. Speaker, having a policy like Bill 10-38 COR as amended shows that our public safety and law enforcement agencies are prepared for stressful situations and are concerned for the mental health and well-being of our officers, surviving families of officers, and our island community. Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to join me in approving Bill 10-38 COR as amended, ensuring the gratitude that we share as a community for the service and sacrifice of our fallen officers is conveyed through policy, and more importantly, that we as an island community make certain that our heroes and their legacies are never erased from our collective public memory. Suzus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Suzus Masi, Senator. On the bill, 10-38 COR is amended. Okay, I'll recognize first the General Lady from Manila, Pago Bay, and then to you, Senator.
Cito Masi, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this measure as introduced by the good Senator. I would like to rise and very briefly to support this measure and thank the good senator from Talafofo for not only introducing this measure, but incorporating suggestions and concerns mentioned during the bill's public hearings. Mr. Speaker, I also echo his appreciation for the majority's markup process as it ensures we are able to amend bills for the better and consider legislation efficiently and effectively. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill number 10-38 is a new benefit for our brave men and women in law enforcement who will make the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty and is the right thing to do. And I am hopeful we can pass this measure unanimously. And before I ask the good speaker to include me as a co-sponsor, I'm hoping that he can add me there. I just want to note that the $100,000 death benefit, if I'm not mistaken, based on the hearings and my notes, was it cannot be garnished to offset debts owed to the government of Guam 1. And what is considered in the line of duty, I know says it, I guess, mirrors federal standards, but I'd be remiss if I didn't quote the section on 4 GCA Chapter 8, as I mentioned it in the public hearing, that it says that public safety and law enforcement officers means Guam Police Department officers, the Guam Fire Department, the firemen, custom and quarantine officers of the Custom and Quarantine Agency, conservation officers, commodity inspectors, and the entomologists of the Department of Agriculture, the territorial park patrol officers of the Department of Parks and Recreation, corrections officers and parole officers of the Department of Corrections, the airport police officers, security personnel, and firefighters of the Antonio B. Wampat International Airport Authority of Guam, the Jose D. Leon Guerrero Commercial Port security personnel, marshals of the Supreme Court of Guam and the Superior Court of Guam, probation officers of the Judiciary of Guam, youth service workers of the Department of Youth Affairs engaged in the juvenile detention and rehabilitation, inspectors and investigators in the Office of the Attorney General's Office, and inspectors and investigators in the Department of Revenue and Taxation. And Mr. Speaker, the reason why I bring this up again, like I brought it up in the public hearing, was it was really important to list those involved in law enforcement as annotated, as it is in Title 4, Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 8. So Section 8501M. So I wanted to make sure that our colleagues and those of the listening audience knew who was included in this measure. And again, thank the good senator from Talafofo for introducing this measure, because it is in recognition of the danger that our officers face, also to boost their recruitment and retention of these officers. And for me personally, Mr. Speaker, to bring parity to those benefits compared to our other jurisdictions. And I think this is a good one. So I rise in support of this measure, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this measure. Sizus Maasi.
Thank you very much, Senator. Now recognize the good senator from Wamututumaiti. Sir, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Bill number 10-38, an act relative to life insurance benefits for public safety and law enforcement officers of the government of Guam who are killed in the line of duty. I think this is a very worthy bill. Bill 10-38 establishes a critical financial safety net for the families of public safety and law enforcement officers who tragically lose their lives in the line of duty. Supporting this bill sends a clear message to our officers and their families that we stand by you and we honor your sacrifice. The concept of providing enhanced death benefits is aligned with established practices across the United States and is similar to the widely respected Gold Star program for military families. Testimony from the Attorney General emphasized the necessity of financially protecting the families of those who risk their lives for our community's safety and security. Passing this bill can help attract qualified candidates to public safety roles, addressing persistent recruitment challenges by demonstrating Guam's tangible commitments to supporting law enforcement officer personnel. By creating more comprehensive benefit packages, Guam becomes a more competitive and attractive destination for public safety personnel. Testimony from Danielle Rossetti of the Judiciary of Guam highlighted the importance of clearly defining what constitutes a line of duty death, particularly given the diverse responsibilities and reserve roles our officers often hold. Perhaps maybe some clearly defined criteria will eliminate some ambiguity, reduce some litigation risk, and ensure fairness in the administrative process. But I will leave that note to the primary author if he would like to tackle that. The Attorney General's testimony raised valid points regarding the unique risk faced by first responders, included elevated cancer risk for firefighters and mental health issues across all public safety professions. Though this may be beyond the scope of this bill, I would encourage the author to potentially think about these things if he'd like to maybe amend things in that direction. The testimony from Edward Byrne, Director of Administration, suggests increasing the basic life insurance coverage to a more realistic and current standard, an adjustment that I believe is long overdue. The bill recognizes the reality of increased living costs and funeral expenses, proposing to update decades-old insurance coverage that currently does not meet today's financial realities. Both the judiciary and the Office of the Attorney General have recommended clear statutory language to define scenarios eligible for the death benefit, helping to minimize confusion and costly disputes. Ensuring legislative clarity now saves significant resources and potential emotional distress in the future. These are just some things I would ask the primary author to consider. But I will leave it up to him to decide whether to address them now or potentially in a future bill. Regardless of what version comes out, I support this bill 110%. I believe it's in the right place at the right time with the right motion towards the people that it serves. And given the diverse nature of roles defined as peace officers under Guam law, maybe we should also consider if there should be given to whether eligibility for the enhanced death benefit should be broadened to include prosecutors, judicial officers, and other peace officers whose duties also expose them to elevated risk. Potentially, such inclusion could strengthen morale across all public safety sectors and law enforcement related entities. I believe the bill as is a completely fine and well put together bill, but if this is if there are going to be future discussions among the body of how we could future potentially improve these bills, these would be my suggestions as a member of this body, and I would leave it up to those who speak after me to discuss the merits of them and if they deserve to be an amendment or not. So I rise in full support of Bill 10-38. I support the author's intent. I support the manner in which he's doing it, and I thank you for this legislation, sir, and I ask all my colleagues to please support it. Mr. Vice Speaker, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you to the good senator from Mongmong Toto Maiti. Any other senator who would like to speak on the motion? Senator from Barragata, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Have a day, and to my colleagues of this body, I rise to express my full and unwavering support for Bill number 10-38 COR, a bill that speaks not only to our responsibility as lawmakers, but to our humanity as a people who depend every day on the bravery of the few. This bill seeks to amend existing law to enhance life insurance benefits for our public safety and law enforcement officers, those who are killed in the line of duty. And I cannot stress enough how important this measure is. It is not merely about financial assistance. It is about recognition, dignity, and justice for the men and women who served our community and for the families they leave behind when the unthinkable happens. Too often, we offer praise and ceremony after the fact. We say thank you. We hold memorials. We post statements. But what lasting support do we provide to the loved ones who must carry on without their son, their daughter, their spouse, their parent? This bill ensures that those words are backed by action. It ensures that the government of Guam does more than mourn. We provide. We protect those who are left behind, just as their loved ones protected us. Our police officers, firefighters, emergency medical personnel, correction officers, and other first responders put on their uniforms every day, not knowing whether they will come home. That's the truth. They walk into fires, they chase armed suspects, they respond to car crashes, domestic violent calls, and life-threatening emergencies. Their job is not just dangerous, it is relentless. And when one of them falls in the line of duty, the pain ripples across our entire community. But for their family, that loss is intimate and it is lasting. It's forever. A spouse becomes a single parent. A child loses their hero. A parent buries their son or daughter. This bill says to those families, you are not alone. This government, this community, this legislature stands with you. Colleagues, this is not about politics. This is about people. It's about honoring service with something more than words, with action, with policy, with compassion written into law. And it's about equity. If you ask these individuals to do the hardest jobs, to take the biggest risks, then we must meet that responsibility with the appropriate level of care and commitment. Some may ask about cost. Yes, there will be cost. But let me ask this. What is the cost of inaction? What is the cost to morale, to recruitment, to the message we send to our current and future first responders if we tell them, Your family may not be provided if the worst thing happens. What is the cost of life? That is a cost I am not willing to accept. Mr. Speaker, this legislation can also serve as a recruitment and retention tool. When officers know that their families will be taken care of, when they know that the government has their backs, that gives them peace of mind, that they are rest assured, that makes Guam a better place to serve, that helps us fill the vacancies we struggle with across our law enforcement and emergency response agencies. I would like to commend the bill's sponsor, the good gentleman from Talafofo, for bringing this forward. And I wanted to take this opportunity to be added to the bill. It is well timed, it is well intentioned, and it is absolutely necessary. And to our public safety officers who may be listening today, I say this: we see you, we honor you, we value you, and we will fight to ensure that your families are taken care of, because that is what you deserve. This is not just a legislation, it's a statement of values. It's about who we are and how we honor those who protect us every day. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, to stand with our public safety community, and to send a message loud and clear that Guam takes care of its heroes, its everyday heroes. Mr. Speaker, I yield the floor. Thank you, Sidus Masi.
Thank you, ma'am. On the bill. Good Senator from Tumuning, you're recognized.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker, and I certainly rise in full support of Bill 10-38 as amended by the committee. And I'd like to first associate myself with the remarks, or the eloquent remarks of the retiring speaker. You know, also want to mention, Mr. Speaker, there was contemplation in the markup of what was also discussed by the good senator from MTM. But the author of the bill wanted to make sure, given our current climate, we know the danger that all of our public safety officers face, particularly with a massive drug epidemic, poverty issues, a community that is currently struggling, and the response every day by our law enforcement. I believe, as you also, a law enforcement officer, Mr. Speaker, know from your colleagues on the street now, it's while we are on this beautiful island, it's also a very dangerous time because of particularly the drug epidemic. And the good author wanted to make sure that we marked up the bill and got the start, at least, to ensure that those in uniform across the various agencies and entities have this benefit. As I close, Mr. Speaker, one of the reasons why I really was taken by the remarks of the retiring speaker is, as an officer, it's kind of interesting. We introduced this legislation, but it's not really for them, because they will no longer be here if that happens, and God forbid that it does happen. As the author said, hope we don't even need to use this bill. But the fact is, we may at some point. But the truth is, it is exactly about those who are left behind. Nationally, you see a lot of programs like Tunnel to Towers and other things that are going on to help families who are left devastated by loved ones who die, even serving our country. And so this is akin to the insurance that those individuals are not forgotten, but also that their families are not forgotten in a most desperate and difficult time. One more comment, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, is that, we've talked about how the death benefit, even within the government now, is for officers is really dated, but this definitely takes care of at least that part to try to help the families in such a difficult and excruciating experience of loss of a loved one, but most especially in the line of duty. So for that reason, Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of Bill 1038. Sijus Masi.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, On the bill, are there any other colleagues who wish to speak? Good Senator from Jigo, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, first, to the two colleagues that have spoken so elegantly, and as a former police officer, just like yourself, Mr. Speaker, and a former investigator for Department of Revenue and Tax, which is included in that list, yeah, and as a retired military, which I don't think anybody here is retired from the military. The benefit doesn't exist in the military. But for this to benefit our law enforcement, hoorah. Thank God. And I thank Senator Sean Gumatato for introducing this bill. I support this bill 100%. And I just hope that we never get to use it. I really hope we never get to use it. But in the event we do use it, at least the families will feel assured that they're being backed, like the elegant speaker from Bergata, that stated that the government is going to back the law enforcement people. That's what we need to do. And with that, I thank you, Speaker and Senator Gumatato. If I could be a co-sponsor, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, are there any other senators? With Senator from Mafami, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in full support of this legislation. As the retiring speaker from Tamuning had mentioned, that this is a bill that is made for supporting the families of those in law enforcement. And it's really about time that we show our support to the families. It's a small token, but at least we start somewhere, and hopefully later on down the line that we'll be able to adjust and amend this in future legislations. But something for our families, those who protect our island, those in the law enforcement community, I stand in full support. And I also would like to ask the sponsor of this legislation to be added as a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Speaker. On the bill, good Senator from Tamuning, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of Bill number 10 as amended by the committee. You know, it has been eloquently said by, of course, the colleagues here this afternoon regarding why we should do it, and it's the time to do it. You know, we have arrived at that time, Mr. Speaker, again, you being a former police officer and also Senator San Augustine, and we have a couple of veterans here as well, military vets. We no longer live in the days of our parents and grandparents where we didn't need to lock our doors, we didn't have fences around our homes, we didn't have alarms, we didn't have CCTVs. We didn't need it at the time. Men and women of law enforcement had always put their lives on the line. Always. Since the very beginning. That's what they were sworn to do. Here we are in 2025. Life is very different here in Guam now. As a gentleman from Tamuning had mentioned, the drug epidemic, poverty level that's here on our island, the challenges that we have here on our island have brought us to this time. And the men and women in law enforcement have greater challenges now. Greater challenges. I mean, just, I think it was yesterday that we read in the paper about an individual just burglarized, walked into a person's home and sat down, burglarized the home and sat down drinking the man's wine like it was his. That's something years ago that we read about that happens somewhere else. That doesn't happen in Guam. But everything that we read now, everything we used to read about that were happening elsewhere, is now happening here. So this bill is very timely. It's needed. Again, as was mentioned, hope we never will have to, will never have to be utilized, because that means it would be a loss of life. But that being said, also, Mr. Speaker, we're greatly challenged with our law enforcement personnel, either retiring, being pilfered off by other agencies, higher paying jobs, better conditions. This goes a ways to show, again, and to be able to maybe entice them to stay. We still have a long ways to go to be able to have them stay a little longer. It's a challenge that we will be meeting, and we meet, and hopefully we'll be addressing. But this bill is timely and needed. And so, again, I rise in full support of this bill. And again, I want to thank the men and women of all law enforcement here on the island. Thank you very much for your services. And we're able to sleep at night because of all the work that our men and women do out there to protect each and every one of us on a daily basis. And I know I asked the author already in regards to adding us to the to the co-authorship. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Speaker Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I too rise in support of the bill. And you know, I struggled, and I'm struggling right now. And it's not because this bill isn't needed. This bill is very much needed. Because as we can speak about the danger that our officers have to confront on a daily basis, you know, it's the mindset that exists amongst law enforcement officers. I struggle with this because I've actually experienced it. I've had to go 4 times to family members to tell them that their loved ones weren't coming home. Four different officers. Two of them basically and technically under my command. And was stated eloquently by the good senator from Jigo, my former officer, brother, and as others did state as well. This is not for the officers themselves. This is for the family that is grieving because of something that, while we accept that it could possibly happen. It's hard to accept when it does happen. And that's a scary thought. Because the mindset that I'm telling you about is while most people run from danger, we're trained to run toward it. We're trained to accept what may be inevitable. You know, Mr. Speaker, I know you can relate to this because even in your military experience, your military service, we're trained to put our lives on the line. You know how hard that is for a family to accept when it does happen? Because the question that I've had to try to answer many times, at least 4 different times, was why did it have to happen to him? What could have been done better so that this was not the outcome? So this is far more than just a benefit, if you will. That's the other thing. It's called a benefit. Wow. I don't care what nomenclature, I don't care how you describe it. It's not enough. It'll never be enough. But it'll be some form of solace, some form of reprieve, some form of eternal gratitude. I mean, and that's hard to fathom as well. And while I appreciate and I accept and I support this bill, I have to agree with the author and with many others. I hope we never have to use it. But I have to be a realist. It's probably going to be used again. And when it does, at least you can provide that family with some support. So I want to thank the author. I want to thank for all those who stated they're going to support this measure as well. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to stop now before I break down. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you to Senator from Vergara. Senator from Tumaning, you're recognized.
Sujus Masi, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this measure. Of course, this bill is supported by not just our body, but I think the community at large supports something like this. And I'd like to also thank the services of our own colleagues who've served as peace officers and officers. I'd like to thank you for your service as well. You know, I went to the public hearing and I was listening to the comments made by our chief of police, and I had an opportunity to speak with him after the public hearing. Because what he was mentioning during his testimony, he was talking about a PSOB, which is Public Safety Officers Benefits, or it's called Hometown Heroes Act. And it was brought to my attention that the amount of funding for an individual who's lost their life in the line of duty, which goes to the family, of course, is almost over $400,000 that is given. Because $100,000 is, in today's time, is not really that much funding needed, especially if the officer has more than 2 children, or even more than 1 child, or more than 1 child, more than 2. The cost of taking care of a family that's been left behind while serving our community is really not that much. So it gave me great comfort to know that there are other options out there for our peace officers. Over $400,000, that's substantial. That's good to know. But it was concerning about what he said, which was, and now let me just read what he says. He was worried what Chief Paris was talking about, where an officer died versus an officer killed. And so, and I'm quoting from him, and so, we want to make sure that we make that distinction. And unfortunately, in this bill, Bill 1038, there are no definitions between killed and died, because an officer may be killed, shot, run over by a car while doing a traffic pullover. An officer may also die in the line of duty, may cause, etc. But he talks about that the Hometowns Act actually explains that. So I looked in the bill, particularly to make sure that we have the correct definition. And I noticed on page 3, line 1, it talks about it, but I didn't see anything that's pertaining to what it says in the Hometown Heroes Act. And for $400,000, I'm sure they would cross their T's and dot their I's to ensure that. So I just have a question to the author of the legislation, Mr. Speaker.
Can you go ahead and state your question?
Sure. So on page 3, line 1, as it explains it, can they explain why that was not incorporated into the markup, that definition?
There's a question that's being posed, and the author, would you yield to the question? Would you yield to the question? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill states that if an officer's death qualifies under the federal program, then that officer's survivor would be eligible for benefits. When we look at the PSOB's, the federal statute, again, as was mentioned in the public hearing, Mr. Speaker, it mentions that this would be the relative state program for it as well. So the definitions are outlined in the federal statute.
Mr. Speaker, if I may, I could barely hear. I'm sorry. I think it's the audio that's coming.
Can you go ahead and repeat your answer?
And I believe we were talking about the Hometown Hero Act and yeah, that section.
Can you repeat the question, Senator Taidewi? Just so that we...
Yes. You can hear me okay, right? My speakers back here are not working. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, in this section of page 3 and line 1, when it begins to explain, how they follow the determination of killed in the line of service and whether an officer is killed, the chief of police mentioned that there is an area in the PSOB, which is Public Safety Offers Benefit Other Known than the Hometown Heroes Act, and it spells that out. So I was just wondering why they didn't incorporate that in page 3 and line 1 when it kind of explains other areas. Is this the same as in the Hometown Hero Act?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question from the gentle lady from Tamuning. In 34 USC Subtitle 1, Chapter 101, Subchapter 11, Public Safety Officers Death Benefits, from Title 34, Crime Control and Law Enforcement, Subtitle 1, Chapter 101, Justice System Improvement. Under this subchapter 11, under Public Safety Officers' Death Benefits, it does list in there, as per the question in the statute, it mirrors that.
From the hometowns, oh, sorry.
Yes, that comes directly from it.
Does that satisfy your?
Yeah, and Mr. Speaker, if I may, so we are seeing that in the section of page 3, line 1, where it explains that. Because I don't see those sections in there. Oh, maybe I haven't. Well, sure.
In the markup.
Yes, I have the markup one
again,
as amended by the Committee on Law. I think if we're talking about
Right.
it, are we on page 3,
On
line 1, section A?
Yeah,
Line 1 has nothing withstanding other provisions of law, rules, regular death. Yeah.
Yes, as notwithstanding any other provision of law, rule, or regulation, if the death of a public safety or law enforcement officer in the line of duty qualifies for death benefits pursuant to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Public Safety Officers Benefit Program or its successor program, the public safety or law enforcement officer's survivor shall be entitled to a one-time death benefit of $100,000 from the government of Guam payable through the Public Safety and Law Enforcement Officers Line of Duty Benefit Fund.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, if I may continue. Okay, so it's at the bottom of page 3, actually, section B, where it talks about the Director shall need arises request for additional appropriations to fund to pay for that. No, it's still not there. Okay, I don't see the sections that he was talking about, but you know, that mirrors what the Chief of Police was talking about, using the Hometown Heroes Act to cover it. But it does show the $100,000 to be payable into the fund in the line of duty of death. I just want to make sure that that is clear on what Chief of Police was talking about, what covers or what determines the officer who had died, whether if he was killed in action or just simply what it says, killed or shot or run over by a car during a traffic pull, or officer may also die in line of duty by causing just a fatal heart attack and pass away. So that being said, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. Of course, to stand in favor of anything that would help protect the families of our peace officers, because we know that they're giving their lives for our community, and especially the families who wait, like I'm sure during your time, Mr. Speaker, waiting for you to come home to make sure that you're safe. That's what the families really want more than anything. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, are there any other persons wishing to speak? Any other senator wishing to speak? Gentlelady from Zonia, you're recognized.
Just Masi, Mr. Speaker. I don't think anyone in here is going to object to increasing life benefits for public safety officers. So I support that. I just have a couple questions on the bill itself, because the fiscal note on the bill said BBMR was unable to determine the amount. So, and the bill makes no appropriation for any amount. It's pretty much unfunded. It says on the new section 5 on the amended bill that they're going to pay this out of, the agencies are going to pay this out of their respective general fund appropriations. And yet there's a fund established, but there's no mechanism for money to go into that fund in this bill. So I just hate that if this is, I hope we are going to be able to cover this. Agencies are being mandated to cover it under their existing appropriations. We know there are several agencies, such as the Department of Corrections, where they are very, very high risk and they are completely strapped right now under current appropriations. So in the previous bill where debate was cut off, we were unable to really fully ensure that we are going to get full value for leases for land That's how we fund these things, is we make sure that we get full value. And we make sure that BBMR gives us some accurate numbers so that we know what's it gonna cost us to increase our life insurance amounts to 100,000. But the new bill is completely changed, and it's no longer, I don't think, a life insurance benefit. It's just a one-time payment benefit. And if the sponsor would yield, I would just like to ask, this new bill now says that if the public safety or law enforcement officer qualifies for death benefits pursuant to the U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance Public Safety Officers Benefits Program, then they are entitled to $100,000 from the government of Guam. So if the author would yield, are our public safety officers potentially qualified under this U.S. Department of Justice program? Will they receive those benefits that are listed there, such as $400,000? I see appropriations were being made on a continuing basis. Are they going to be receiving that? And then in addition to that, the $100,000 from the government of Guam?
Would the author yield to the question?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, all based on the statute that as long as our law enforcement folks who are defined are eligible for the federal benefit. And again, this is based on the public hearing, would be mirroring that from a state benefit point of view. So yes, that is correct.
If the author could clarify, so our Guam law enforcement officers are going to receive this federal benefit?
If there are instances that where our public safety officers they're all covered by it, but if their claim is approved by it, then again, every single one of them would be eligible.
So they're
under the federal statute.
So they're eligible under a federal statute for an amount much greater than this, and we're going to give them, in addition to that, $100,000 from Guam?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, that was not I don't remember that being discussed at the public hearing, Mr. Speaker. This is, so, and then I think maybe the previous speaker was also discussing, so they say here, public safety or law enforcement officer. In the original bill, that was defined in a current section of the statute, so we knew exactly which agencies and which officers of those agencies are covered. The AG had made a recommendation that we use another statute instead and give this benefit to peace officers, which I think might be a longer list than just the law enforcement officers under the other statute. And if I could just ask the author, why did he not take that recommendation of the AG? Why did we not include peace officers?
You yield to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, if our law enforcement personnel are qualified under the PSOB, then they would qualify under this particular benefit.
So to my understanding, it makes a distinction.
But peace officers are not qualified, they're different.
Yeah, in the public hearing, there was an ask of definitions. And so, again, the federal definition, it was a kind of a merging of the two. And in the markup, that was a critical component too. The definition was addressed as asked by those in the public hearing.
The definition was addressed, but it's more narrow than what was requested by the AG, so I just wanted to clarify that. And then the benefit, well, I guess this is only for a death benefit, because the federal program also gives for a disability benefit. I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out if we are, and then there were questions from the different agencies for different things, the judiciary to define the line of duty, Department of Admin, and the AG, of course, as previous speakers have said. I don't want to be, if they are already covered by this federal statute, which is much more generous than what we seem to be able to put into this bill right now, it might be a benefit to include peace officers who are not covered at all by either, perhaps, at this point. So, yeah. This is a line of duty, but the author would yield, the police department also had another question, and that was, or request, and that was that we include off-duty police officers. Would those be included then under this program, according to the way it's written now, where we have to follow the U.S. Department of Justice's program?
Is that a question to the author?
Yes, if the author would yield.
Would the author yield to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, if they qualify under the PSOB, then they would qualify for the benefit. And again, instances that are claimed, and also to address the other questions, the PSOB covers a wider range of titles in it to include judicial officers, trainees. Again, this is all subject to claims approval, so we would be the state program for that.
What about the line of duty? That's what my question was about.
May you repeat that again?
Does it cover the line of duty as requested by the GPD, the off-duty?
Senator, the question is, do it also cover off-duty?
Mr. Speaker, again, it only goes to those that are on duty, and it has a listing in the federal statute that it would claim. So if they don't qualify under the federal, then they would not apply locally. Again, the reasoning for that was we wanted to ensure that definitions were covered as laid out in the public hearing.
Did that answer your question, Senator?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I'm just a little concerned about that because at the public hearing, when they were giving their testimony, they knew exactly whether they were covered or not according to that original bill. I don't know if the same people are covered or not under this bill, and they haven't been given that opportunity to weigh in on it as rewritten. And I am concerned that this fund is there. We create a fund, but we don't fund the fund. And normally this is like an unfunded mandate. But I see the provision that says they're going to pay it out of their budgets. And as you said, Mr. Speaker, I hope they will never have to use this. But you know, these life insurance benefits, as we said, Department of Administration is reconsidering the current life insurance benefits for all Government of Guam employees and looking to increase those. So I think that's a great idea. But I also think that, you know, while we can give a benefit if they die in the line of duty, you know, I'd like to continue our efforts to prevent that as much as possible by ensuring that these officers who we know right now, we're kind of on notice that the Department of Corrections, for example, is overcrowded. The funding for the new prison has been deleted not by us, but I think vetoed. And so those options are gone. And those officers continue to be at risk. And so in order to protect them from death, I would like to make this amendment consistent with the bill, I hope, and the author's intent that we decrease the risk of loss of life to our law enforcement personnel by mandating that the police department shall hire another 50 officers and the Department of Corrections shall hire another 50 officers during fiscal year 2025. The year that we are on notice that they are understaffed, the year that we are very much worried that we are going to have casualties because of these types of conditions. Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. I have a copy of your amendment here as you are proposing, and as much as I can appreciate the intent and what it is for, I am going to go ahead and rule that it's non-germane to the discussion and to the bill. And so therefore, I'm going to rule your amendment out of order. You still have the,
Susan Mossy, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion with all due respect to overrule the ruling of the
there's a
presiding
motion to
officer.
overrule the ruling of the chair.
Yet again, the amendment again is to add a new section to the bill that reads, in order to decrease the risk of loss of life to our law enforcement personnel, the Guam Police Department shall hire another 50 officers and the Department of Corrections shall hire another 50 officers during fiscal year 2025.
On the amendment to overrule the chair, okay? The amendment, okay, or basically the motion is to overrule the ruling of the chair on the germaneness of the amendment. All those in favor of overruling the chair, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion fails. Senator Talai, you still have the floor.
Susan Mossy, Mr. Speaker, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak on this bill in full without being interrupted or being cut off, or a motion for a previous question being made to cut off debate. I think that's how we should handle all of our bills. If we have nothing to hide, that we should be fully transparent, and we should answer the questions that were asked to us during those public hearings as much as we can. And there's no way we're going to be able to do that when bills are amended by committee unless we are able to do that in full on the floor. Susan Mossy, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, ma'am. On the bill, any other senator wishing to speak? No senator, good senator, or do you want to close?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I, at this time, if I'm able, to ask that co-sponsors be added to the bill?
Notwithstanding the ruling to put it on in writing?
I will.
Notwithstanding
Notwithstanding the
the rule
rules.
to put the amendments in writing?
Okay.
Yes? Go ahead and ask me.
Can I ask that we add co-sponsors to the
Yes,
bill?
you can. Notwithstanding?
Notwithstanding the
Thank you,
rules.
yes. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. So can I list them?
Yes?
Okay, so Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask that we add co-sponsors Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Christopher Duenas, Senator Tina Rosemary Barnes, Senator William Parkinson, Senator Shelley Calvo, Senator Joe San Augustine, Senator Tony Anna, Senator Tel Tadigui, and Senator and Speaker Frank Blas Jr. to be co-sponsors to the bill.
On the motion. Okay? Yeah, you're on it. You're in it. Okay? Anybody? Okay? On the motion, no objection, motion carries.
Mr. Speaker, I motion to place Bill 10-38 COR as amended to the voting file.
On the motion to place Bill number 10-38 COR as amended and as further amended on the floor. Okay, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Thank you. On the next bill. Okay. Bill number 14-38 COR. Gentle lady from Tumuning, you are recognized, ma'am.
Susan Mossy, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on Bill. Hold on, because my things. Can I get just 1 minute? My stand is deciding to go down.
1 minute recess. We're back in session.
Thank you for that
Sir?
short recess. It was just some technical difficulty here. At this time, Mr. Speaker, I would like to move Bill 14-38 COR, introduced by myself, an act to amend 1909C, Chapter 19, Title 1, Guam Code annotated relative to the duties of the public auditor to the second reading file, and I'd like to speak on it.
It's in the second
I
reading.
mean, the third reading file, and I'd like to speak on it. Thank you.
On the motion to move the bill to the third reading, and you'd like to speak to it, you can
Yes,
proceed.
I did say that, yeah.
You can proceed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and colleagues, and those who are watching this session today, I stand before you to speak on a bill that I had introduced in the 35th Guam Legislature and the 37th Guam Legislature. Now, in the 38th Guam Legislature. They say 3 times is a charm, right? And I bring before you Bill 14-38 CR, which seeks to amend Guam law to strengthen the accountability of government agencies by enforcing the timely submission of audited fiscal reports. As senators, one of our primary responsibilities is to oversee the government's annual budget. To fulfill this duty effectively, we rely on accurate and timely fiscal data. The annual audit report is a cornerstone of this process, providing critical analysis, ensuring the credibility of financial statements, and helping us assess both past performances and future obligations. By law, the annual comprehensive fiscal report, ACFR, is due by June 30th of each year. However, Guam has failed to meet this deadline 13 times since 2000. The Organic Act explicitly requires the governor to submit this report to Congress and the U.S. Department of Interior within 120 days of the fiscal year's end. Despite this federal mandate, delays persist, delays that hinder our ability to make informed decisions and fulfill our fiduciary responsibility. Bill number 14-38 introduces a $250 fine on departments and or agency heads who fail to submit their audit reports on time to the Office of the Public Accountability. Excuse me. Importantly, all fines collected will be directed to the Guam Memorial Hospital Authority hospital operation funds, ensuring that increased accountability translates into tangible benefits for our community. Last term, the 37th Guam Legislature recognized the necessity of this legislation to enforce compliance with the Organic Act of Guam and ensure transparency in the government finances. Unfortunately, the bill was vetoed by the governor, and several override attempts fell short. This term, I'm hopeful for a different outcome. We have a responsibility to hold our government agencies accountable for their financial obligation and to ensure that taxpayer dollars are managed with integrity and transparency. It is time to uphold these standards and demand accountability for our directors. I welcome any of the comments or recommendations that can further strengthen this bill's intent and effectiveness. Together, let us take the necessary step toward greater transparency and accountability in our government. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. On the bill, 14-38, COR. Okay, are there anybody who wish to? Good gentleman from MTMU recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in support for the general concept of holding these agencies accountable. So I would like to further strengthen this legislation by introducing an amendment. I believe it is in the drive, if we'd have a moment to pass out the amendments.
Okay, they're processing that amendment right now. I'm going to go ahead and permit you to start to talk about it, so in the interest of time, but then when we're not going to, okay?
Yes, sir, no problem.
Okay.
I'll be happy to talk about the amendment
All right.
now. The amendment is for page 2, line 3, to add a new subsection 3 to 1909C of Chapter 19, Title 1, Guam Code annotated to read, deadline extension. An agency director unable to comply with the submission deadlines specified herein may submit a written request to the Office of Public Accountability for an extension prior to the established deadline. The requests clearly specify the reasons for noncompliance and propose an alternative submission date. Upon receipt of the request, the OPA shall issue a written decision in 3 business days. Should the OPA grant the extension, the decision shall indicate the revised deadline. If the extension is denied, the written decision shall specify the reasons for denial and must be transmitted to the Governor of Guam and the Speaker of the Legislature on Guahan within 48 hours of issuance. And that is basically my amendment. I think there is a case to be made that at the judgment of the Office of Public Accountability, the auditor, that he should be able to make the call that if they have a written excuse for why they are not in time, he should be able to judge if it's a valid excuse or not. Because, you know, there's a lot of things that could happen in the world, and who's to say what could be valid and not valid in the future. I think we should allow some time for a mechanism, allow for a mechanism to, for someone to make a necessary common sense judgment call if it's truly not their fault. And so with that, I would ask my colleagues to please support this amendment. And with that, I'll yield my time on this amendment, sir.
Okay, we'll take a 1-minute recess until we can be able to look, because I don't have a copy of the amendment yet. Okay, 1-minute recess.
No problem.
Back from recess. Okay, the amendment proffered by the good senator from MTM has been passed out. And it is on the Google Drive. On the amendment as proffered. On the amendment as proffered. Good lady from Tumuning, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate what the good author of this amendment is putting in play, but I do have some concerns with this section here, 3 business days upon receipt. Hold on. Why is it 3 days? I just have a question to the author of the amendment. Why 3 days?
Will the author of the amendment yield to the question?
Yes, I'd yield to the question. I just chose 3 days because I thought it was a nice halfway point between 1 day to answer the question and 1 whole week to answer the question. I think anything beyond the week goes beyond the scope of what is necessary for a valid excuse. But I think 1 day is also too short, so I kind of landed somewhere in the middle, kind of chose the path of balance. Let's have 3 days, but you know, if there's a different time frame that would be more appropriate or better suited to achieve the goals of this legislation, I'm more than happy to entertain that. I'm not, there's no sacred cows here in this amendment.
Thank you. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the author for answering the question. This last part, if the extension is denied, the written decision shall specify a reason for the denial and must be transmitted to the governor and unless the Speaker of the Legislature within 48 hours of issuance. I have no problem with that, you know, providing a timeline in which if one was denied on an extension to be submitted to us, so we clearly know what is going on. But you know, and I have to say there's another amendment that's almost similar to this, and I actually like both of them, and I'm kind of torn because I think that one is a lot clearer than the other, but it's under the same thing. So if you give me 1 minute, Mr. Speaker, I can just collaborate with both of these authors to try and combine it into one to make it simpler.
Okay, we'll take a 1 minute recess. back from recess, Senator, good Senator from Tamuning, ma'am. You have the
Thank
floor,
you,
yeah.
and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me an opportunity to collaborate with both of these amendments and both of the authors. Their intention is almost exactly the same. So we're going to move forward with the good senator from MTM, and I'd like to make an amendment to his amendment, and notwithstanding to do it without having to write it down. It's very simple, Mr. Chair. If you read the amendment from the senator from MTM, this will begin on letter A. Okay, we'll read it through and I'll tell you where the amendment goes. But letter A, any agency director unable to comply with the submission deadline specified herein may submit a written request to the Office of the Public Accountability, parentheses OPA, for an extension at least 5 days, and this is what we will incorporate, just those words, at least 5 days, and then continue on prior to the established deadline, and ask that the legal make any corrections, grammatical corrections to that amendment. I'd like to proffer that amendment. Again, Mr. Speaker, it is just incorporating the word at least 5 days prior to the established deadline to be incorporated.
Does everybody understand the amendment? Anybody need for clarity? There is one area, you did start by saying any, any, that says and. Are you changing and to any or keeping it as an agency? You said any agency.
Oh, no, we maintain where
Okay.
section A,
Okay.
an agency directed, that stays all the way through to public accountability and for an extension. And then this is where we incorporate at least 5 days, and then we can, that's the inclusion, the amendment to incorporate at least 5 days. And then we continue with prior to the established deadline.
I just want to clarify because you did
Yes.
say any instead of and.
Yes,
so
sir.
it's
Yes.
and. Okay? So on the amendment, to the amendment, is to submit the words at least 5 days after an extension and, okay, and before prior. So to read, written request to the Office of Public Accountability, OPA, for an extension at least 5 days prior to the established deadline. Okay? Any discussions on the amendment to the amendment? No discussion. Any objection to the amendment to the amendment? No objection. Motion carries. You still have the floor on the amended now.
On the amendment to the amendment.
On the amendment that has been amended.
Yeah, that's it, Mr. Speaker. I thank you for the opportunity, and also thank the good author of this amendment that's been amended for clarifying that and allowing an opportunity for these directors to at least explain themselves as to why it's late and the OPA making that decision. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome. Any discussion on the amendment to the amendment or the amended amendment? Any discussion on the amended amendment? Gentlelady from Barragata Heights, you are recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, so after we just approved that amendment, I think it's important to tie it in with the rest of the bill. And this notwithstanding, the deadline set forth in this act should also be added to this bill so that it's not conflicting with the previous sections 1 and 2.
You don't have any want to be specific about this?
Sure, yeah, so basically the amendment we just passed as amendment should have the phrase notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act in the very beginning, because without it, it's in conflict with the number 1 and number 2 of the bill. I can put together a amendment if you like.
That's going to be an amendment to the amendment as amended.
If it's allowed.
That's not allowable in our rules.
Okay, because otherwise the bill's in conflict with each other. The amendment is in conflict with the bill.
I see your point here.
Thank you.
And so that there is congruency and it doesn't fail on this thing?
Yes.
Okay, I will go ahead and allow that amendment to the amendment as amended.
Okay.
So can you
appreciate
go
it.
ahead and repeat that again?
Okay, yes, thank you. So it's with the amended amendment, I think it's critical that we add in the very beginning, notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act, so that it doesn't conflict with items 1 and number 2.
So your that's submission amendment, notwithstanding, it's after A, subcolumn A, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Notwithstanding,
Notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act.
notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act,
Right, and then it
an
goes on.
agency,
Yeah, that correct. An agency director unable to comply, and so forth.
the amendment that's being proffered is immediately after subsection A, it should read, notwithstanding the deadline
So we're taking this, putting it there.
in this act, am I correct? Notwithstanding the deadline in this act?
Notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act.
Set forth in this act. Notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act, comma, an agency director unable.
To comply, yes, that's correct.
Any discussion on that amendment? Again, subsection A will start notwithstanding the deadline set forth in this act, comma, an agency director unable to comply with the submission of the deadline, submission deadline. Any discussion? Any discussion on this amendment? All proffered by the good gentle lady from Barragán Heights. No discussion? Any objection to this amendment? No objection to this amendment? Amendment carries. Okay. We're done, Senator Paris? Ma'am, we're done? This is on the
Yes.
amended,
Yes.
okay?
Yes. Well, thank you for that, Mr. Speaker. I just want to also address the amended bill that, you know, after being at the info hearing.
Why don't we go ahead and dispense of this amendment
Okay.
first, okay? Because
Okay, thank
okay?
you.
Because then it gives you the opportunity. Senator Will, you want to go ahead and close on this?
That's okay, sir. I'll yield my time on closing.
All right. Okay, on the amendment that has been amended and amended again, notwithstanding, are there any objections? No objection, motion carries. Senator Paris, did you want to speak? Good gentle lady from Barragán Heights, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this amended bill. After being at the informational hearing with the public auditor, it was made known that a lot of these delays have to do with the capacity with these agencies and that they lack the proper expertise, accountant expertise. And so what happens is there's a lot of back and forth between Department of Administration and with the agencies. And so I think that this mitigation, this amended bill would help to provide some sort of, I guess, permission for a waiver to comply with the deadline due to reasons that are not in the control of Department of Administration. And also I want to urge as well that, you know, we definitely need to build the capacity with the government when it comes to these experts so that we can have timely audits that where we make these decisions in regards to really important, you know, the budget for our government and how we serve the people. You know, the last thing we want to do is to run in a deficit and to over appropriate funds. We definitely want to make sure that we are running responsible regarding the our fiscal policies. And yes, I think this bill strikes a balance between enforcement, and this is something that the public auditor was advocating for many years. How do we get these agencies to respond in a timely manner so that we can have the information to make the proper decisions? But it also strikes the balance for those cases where it's not under the control of these agencies and having to get that information, it's not as easy as it is. But at the same time, we need to move forward and improve government services because our people rely on it. So I appreciate this opportunity to rise in support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill as amended, are there any colleagues who wish to speak? Gentleman from EPEN, you're
Sujos Masia, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to rise in support of the bill. I feel like this is my 10th time rising in support of the bill because I rose in support of it in the public hearing. I rose in support of it when it was debated in the prior term, and I rose in support of the amendments. And then when we tried to override the governor's veto, I also spoke in support of the measure. So I don't think we need to rehash the reasons why this is a good bill. I think we need to assist the public auditor in really holding these agencies accountable. And, I'm knocking on wood here that should this measure pass, and it looks like it does, and if the governor should veto it, I'm praying for a much different fate here in the 38th Guam Legislature. So I just wanted to lodge my official support of the bill and thank the, good gentle lady from Tumuning for its reintroduction. Sujos Masia, Mr. Speaker.
You're very welcome. Any others? Gentle lady from Hoggett. You are recognized.
I wanted to join in the chorus of senators that are rising in support of this bill. I too stand in support of Bill 14. I recall in the public hearing, I asked the public auditor, is this ridiculous, necessary, or both, that we have to legislate government directors to do their jobs? And this bill, although it's amended, I still stand in support, and I also appreciate the fact that it includes the fines that might result from this bill to go toward the Guam Memorial Hospital, which we all know is direly needed. So thank you again for letting me speak, and again, I stand in full support of Bill 14.
Thank you very much. The gentleman from AFME, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too stand in full support of this bill, and I look forward for it passing this body. And like the good gentleman from EPEN had spoken earlier, that should this bill get vetoed, that this body will override that veto as we move forward to keeping our government transparent and keeping accountability within our system. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. The gentlelady from Barrigada, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in strong support of Bill number 14-38 COR because financial accountability is not an option. It is a responsibility. For too long, our government has faced delays in financial reporting, creating inefficiencies that impact budgeting, oversight, and ultimately public trust. This bill is a necessary step forward toward ensuring that every agency head takes their duty seriously when it comes to transparency in government spending. By requiring timely submission of financial reports and imposing penalties for non-compliance, we are setting a clear expectation that deadlines must be met and accountability must be upheld. This bill it's not about punishing agency leaders. It is about ensuring that those in positions of authority take ownership of their financial responsibilities. Taxpayer dollars fund every aspect of our government, and the people of Guam have the right to know where their money is being spent and properly accounted for. Under this measure, Failure to submit the required financial information will result in a 250 fine per missed deadline with additional fines for continued noncompliance. This is not an arbitrary number. It is a reasonable and necessary measure to ensure that financial reporting is not an afterthought, but a priority. Beyond improving government transparencies, this bill also benefits your public health system, as all collected fines will be directed towards Guam Memorial Hospital Operations Fund. That means accountability failures will not only be addressed, but will also contribute to improving healthcare services for our community. This measure ensures that noncompliance has real consequences while also creating a direct benefit to the people of Guam. By supporting Bill number 14-38 COR, we are strengthening public trust, improving fiscal responsibility, and reinforcing the integrity of our government. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting in favor of this important legislation, and I thank the author for bringing this forward. And I will take this opportunity to ask her if she can include me in this legislation. Thank you, Sadus Masi.
Thank you very much. Gentleman from Tumuning, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise in full support of this bill, as was previously mentioned by a gentleman from, where are you from, gentleman? Telefov or Inaran? From Guam. Yeah. That, I guess we could play back the previous soundbite from the 37th Guam Legislature in regards to our support of this measure. But again, it's hopefully this time that it'll pass. There's amendments in place. There's an amendment in place that hopefully will garner the enough votes to succumb a veto. But that being said, again, I stand in full support of this bill, and likewise, I ask the author that you include all the members of the 38th Guam Legislature and her co-sponsorship. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Gentleman from Telefufu, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too rise in support of Bill 14-38. Mr. Speaker, this is about priorities, and I believe that by giving the Office of the Public Auditor the ability to do exactly what is necessary to carry out the duties under Guam law, I think we should continue to support every effort to do so. Also, there really needs to be some level of consequences for a willful lack of action to support the mission of the elected public auditor. Also, Mr. Speaker, I would also like to add my name, if I could, to be added as a co-sponsor to this piece of legislation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. Are there any other members willing to speak, wanting to speak? Gentlelady from Jonia.
Sadus Masi, Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this bill, and I thank the author for her attempts to implement this at the request of the public auditor. She has done this in the last term. She brought it, it was vetoed by the governor, and we attempted to override it three times as she pointed out. And three times some members of the current body voted no on the override, and then one of them actually introduced almost an identical bill in this term. But I hope that we don't see that kind of thing anymore, that we will be sincere and that we will help the auditor. This is an attempt to help the auditor's office to get the information that they need to complete the financial audits of the government of Guam. The governor vetoed the original bill, saying that we shouldn't punish these agency heads because there are other reasons beyond their control that the audits are late. And then when we heard further information from the public auditor as what those reasons might be, one of them was, for example, that information such as the other post-employment benefits program financial reporting and disclosures, or the OPEB report from the Department of Administration, was not given to the Guam International Airport, the Guam Retirement Fund, maybe GWA, and without that, those agencies could not conclude their audits or their portions of the audit. So it seems to have stemmed from DOA, at least that one report. I've heard from agency heads asking them what is up with the audits, what would cause you to have a delay. We were told by OPA again that even the Medicaid, MIP information that we clearly needed was not assessed in time. Sometimes we're told that OTEC assistance is just not timely for these agencies, such as Chamorro Land Trust. If they need assistance from OTEC to access their information, their data, in order to complete their part of the audit, they need that timely assistance. I was told by some other agency heads that the FMIS, when they converted, has really been a big cause of inability of agency heads to access the information that they also need. Spencer. So again, this information, this is not just a matter of we want to punish people. It's a matter of it has so many repercussions. One agency's delay causes repercussions for the other, causes delay in the entire government of Guam's audit, which is supposed to be due June 30, June 30, before our budget deadlines, before we deliberate on the budgets in August. But we haven't seen those in the last few years. They've been delayed. So we are, they're kind of no use to us as we are going through budget deliberations, because, what's wrong? Oh, sorry. You need to take a recess?
Can we just take a couple minutes recess and I'll let you,
Yes.
okay? We need to reset, okay? Couple minutes recess.